Tag from Life Done Free, folks. Let's hear what he has to say about the rest of the world.
Yep. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello. Hey, I get a rare opportunity today. One, I get to speak prior to Joel. How cool is that? Right? Anybody excited to see Joel today? Because I am. Right? I've spoken all over the country, and usually, you know, my speeches go towards COVID, or they go towards exiting the system, or they go towards those kind of things. But I got invited to come up today and speak about community, which is a topic that's really close to my heart because, you know, where we live, you know, what started out just a few years ago, well, many years ago, is just two of us at a barbecue restaurant. It's turned into 1,200 acres of intentional homesteads all around me with our own education system, our own medical system, you know, and it continues to grow. But for those of you guys who don't know me, I am Tag from the YouTube channel Life Done Free. I'm also the founder of the social media platform freesteading.com. And in addition to that, I own the alternative energy company Grid Down. But for today's conversation, what I want you guys to know is that I'm a 100% off-grid homesteader, and I live in a large intentional neighborhood. And I hope you noticed I did not use the word intentional community. And I did that on purpose. Okay? As I mentioned, our community has about 1,200 acres in it. And when I talk about intentional neighborhood versus intentional community, intentional neighborhood, what it means to me is that we don't all live on a little piece of land somewhere, right? We all own our own lands. We own our own homes. We have our own, you know, my house where I live, I make my own rules. Nobody's making them for me, you know. But together, collectively, we come together, you know, to live this life that we want to live of self-sustainability. But I want to step back a little bit and talk before we get into community. And today I'm going to talk about how to find it, how to keep it, why it's important, all those things. But I want to take us back through history just a little bit because I think it's important that I share with you guys that we're not the only ones. This has been going on for a long, long period of time. You know, history gives us many examples of why community was really this building block. You know, and I can give you many, but for today I'm just going to go back into the 1800s. And, you know, the settlers on the East Coast were leaving the East Coast because of political, social, and religious divide. Does that ring a bell? Right? I mean, they were leaving for those reasons, and it's interesting how even back then there was propaganda. You know, the government said, if you go west, we'll give you free land. And so that was one of the motivations, right? 1842, they found gold. And it's funny, if you ever want to really read something interesting, go look at the newspaper ads of the gold rush. Because every ad said things like, you know, wealth awaits everyone. You know, 2 miners take $1 million of gold out of a mine. When the truth is almost nobody made any money, right? But they had propaganda even back then. The churches got involved, and they called it the Great Manifest Destiny. You guys ever heard those words? Right? That it was God's calling to go west. But regardless of why they went west, the fact of the matter is they couldn't do it alone. You know, they went west in these huge wagon trains, right? But even then, they weren't alone. You know, they didn't have a salt mine. They weren't carrying them with them. They had to go get supplies, right? They had to go get those kind of things. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but 40% of the population participated in the Great Migration back in the day. 40%, 4 out of 10 people. And I'm telling you guys, I'm so excited that I get to participate in the Great Resignation. I am. You know, we get to change the rules and change the way things go, all by our choices, you know, that we get to make. And so I'm super excited about that. It's also neat for me to think back that the pioneers of those days simply bugged out. You know, that's what they did. Anyway, so we talked about my community a little bit. I want you guys to know my neighborhood works like any other neighborhood. We have engineers, we have attorneys, we have, you know, doctors, we have farmers, we have plumbers, we have electricians. We have all of those normal, you know, types of skills that you would see in a community. I think the biggest point I want to make, and you're going to hear me talk about it a lot today, is none of that happened by mistake. Right? We weren't just sitting around going, man, I'd really like to have a community. You know, and then boom, that community was there. It was completely done intentional. Most people that email me and talk to me who know my story about community, I think they fail in that they look at community from this singular sense. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. So if you guys ever known James Wesley Rawls' book Patriot is a great example. So 5 people get together and they jump in Susie's off-road Jeep with 1,000 rounds of ammunition and a year's worth of food, and they head out to some place to survive the zombie apocalypse. And not only is that not real, it's dangerous, you know, in my opinion. So what I'd like to do today is I'm going to start with how I view community. And then from there, we're going to be able to talk a little bit about why it's important, how you actually go about doing it, and the most important point, which is how you keep it. Because that's the hardest part, believe it or not. So the first thing is, instead of looking at it as the singular circle of, these 8 people, I'm going to encourage you guys to look at it as a series of circles, or think of it as a big funnel. I was talking to Mandy Garrett. Wait, Mandy, yeah, we were talking yesterday about this, about the bottom of the funnel for me is what we call the clans. And so, like, I have the tag clan. Well, the tag clan is me and my wife, right? And my kids and their spouses. So it's just your family, basically, at the bottom. And what makes a community, I think, work, and one of the biggest things I could stress to you guys, is to make sure that when you guys get these communities built up, that those clans, those families maintain their sovereignty. I'm going to give you guys some stories, and I hope you don't mind me sharing my mistakes that we've made along the way, but I think it will help. So early in my life in this, I had a crew that you would think of that I described earlier, and we went, and man, every weekend we were out barbecuing or shooting or doing whatever, but the problem is that the humans got involved in the process. And there was a particular time where one mom felt like her child didn't get an equal-sized bowl of cereal. So silly, right? And that sent that group spiraling out of control because they were all on one piece of land. There was nowhere for them to go to. Versus what I consider an intentional neighborhood. If that happened to me today or if something weird, I'd just go home. It really wasn't a big deal. So remember that I talked about sovereignty. I'm going to get back to that a lot as we go through this. But if you get a couple clans together, right, a couple families, then you get what I consider a crew, right? And we have a beautiful one where I live. We get together and we harvest food, right? We get together and we butcher. We get together and we build. We get together and do those things, but they have their own sovereignty. There's their own families, I get emails all the time that says, "Tag, what are the rules of your community?" I'm like, don't be a dick. That's it. There's no more rules.
Hey, that's my line.
That's it. There don't need to be anything more than that. So anyways, we're talking about the crew. So around me, I have 19 homesteads that are directly around me, and there's about another 20 people who live in the cities, kind of around us. And we are that crew that get together and do those kinds of things. But if you get a bunch of crews together, this is really, really important. This is where you come up with the MAG. And you guys have heard the word MAG before, right? Mutual Assistance Group. It's made up of a whole lot of other crews. There's a guy here today who is part of a group, not my community, but another community. But we get together and do potlucks and get together and do all kinds of things. They operate completely different, than what we do, but it works, it works good. So the clan, the crew, and the MAG are kind of a geographical thing. And think of it just like a funnel, right? If I can't build my crew if I can't get the MAG built. I just can't, because it all kind of funnels down through that. The other thing that I would tell you is the circle outside of all of that is you guys, and I consider that the mind, right? It stands for the like-minded. You guys are my mind, right? So people always ask me, how big is your community? I'm like, which one? Which one are we talking about? Because they're just dynamic. I want to tell you a story about the mind and why it's important. 2 SRFs ago, I was speaking here about me leaving the corporate world over COVID. And I got off stage and I had some people approach me, and one of them, we call him Indiana, well, because he's from Indiana, and his wife we call MMR because she came out to see me and got stuck on a minimum maintenance road, and I had to go pull her out, which then I got stuck, and then someone had to come pull me out. So anyway, she'll be minimum maintenance road the rest of her life. But they came up to me and they started talking to me, and today they have a functioning homestead in my community, in Kansas all the way here from Tennessee. I had a doctor approach me when I was here that same day, and her name is Leanne, and her husband Mo is an emergency room doctor, and they have now purchased land and are building a homestead in our area. And so the mind is super critical because it's what feeds everything else. Without the like-minded, it would never happen. The other thing I want to tell you guys is, and I'm going to try not to rant politically here, but the system's designed for us to fail. And the more we can yoke up, the more we can get communities together, whether that's in Kansas, where I live, or right here in Tennessee, we can build things like parallel economies, and we can build things together that we don't have to fight them anymore, guys. We just have to ignore them. We just have to go create our own systems. And this happens right here by you guys being intentional and buying that ticket to come to places just like this. It's impacted my community. This is why when Nicole calls me or says, "Hey, will you come back?" I always come. Man, because it's benefited my community directly. One other circle I want to talk about before we get into community, which is what I call the willing, and I think this is important. In your guys' local community, you will have, in my community, I have 3 plumbing companies in my town, or the closest town to me. One of them's like-minded, 2 of them aren't. Guess who gets our money?
Yeah.
Right? We vote intentionally with our dollar. And so that, I consider it the willing because they're not really homesteaders, they're not really preppers, they're not really that, but they're friendly to our cause. Everyone's at a different place in their journey, and so as they continue through their journey, they'll have a welcome home someday when that time comes. I'm going to tell you guys a brief personal story because I think it's just so important. I had an uncle once who told me that I was nuts. And he held to that ground. Man, you're weird. Time went on, and he came to me one day and he said, you know what, Tag, you might be the smartest guy I know. And I remember thinking to myself right then, I'm so glad I didn't call him an idiot. Seriously. We're all at this different place in our journey, and had I went at him, like, you dumbass, right, where would that have been? He'd have been turned off. Now he's free or freer from a mental perspective, right? All because I just recognized that he was at that particular place in his journey. So anyways, those are the circles that I look at it. So let's talk about why community is important. And I'm going to talk a lot about our community and some of the mistakes that we made. But the first thing I want to talk about is, for any of you guys who know me and know my story, I left the corporate world. I had a very high-paying job. I ran upwards of $700 million of financial holding companies. And when the COVID thing came down, they told me to mandate it. I refused. I was exited off the stage, left, and lost my career of 23 years. And, I went through this weird phase of, okay, what is freedom? What does it really mean? And I went so far as we built a huge spreadsheet calculator that spits out a number at the end that told me how free I was. Because I come from risk, right? That's my background. But anyway, 100% freedom is not possible. And it's certainly not possible alone. I can assure you this. I don't know how many people in this room have a salt mine, a sugar plantation, and a sawmill. I don't. How many people in here can make their own oil filters or their own fuel or their own? We have to have others, right? And so as you go through this, I don't think we'll ever get to 100% free in my definition of freedom, but I do think we can get very, very close if what we do is embrace community and we reach out to others. I'm going to talk a lot about how we go about doing that. But out of curiosity, how many gardeners do we have today in the audience? Yeah, that's kind of a loaded question, right? I knew I would get a whole bunch of hands. When I went through that, anybody ever grown all the food they need for the year? Whew. I figured out I could buy my way out of energy independence. I could buy my way out of water independence. I could buy my way out of... You cannot buy your way out of food independence. So I have processed a year's worth of food before, and it took a community. You're not going to sit down at a table and process a year's worth of food. It's just not going to happen. Same with like standing barns, doing all of those things. One of the great benefits we get out of community, I call Skillshare. Guys, freedom is this weird thing. You know how many people are behind the light switch to make sure your lights come on? Or your water? Or your food? It's tremendous. And I don't have the time in my life to learn every single skill. I just don't. So by having a community, what I get to do is I get to share upon the skills of others. Remember I told you guys about Indiana, the guy that I met here 2 years ago? 2 weekends ago we built him a house. So he had all the materials sitting there, and we showed up, about 40 of us, and at the end of the day he had a house for the cost of 10 pizzas. Those two people, MMR in Indiana, they knew nothing about construction. Not a thing. Now he's an aircraft mechanic. How cool is that? Right? Spent 20 years in the Navy. She was in logistics in the Navy, but they knew nothing about construction. So if I ever get to a spot where I need big logistical help, I'm going to go to her, right? Because I don't have time to do it. And for any of you guys who live off grid and homestead, there's just not enough time. We get up first thing in the morning every single day. We work till after dark every single day. That's what we do every single day. And I still can't do it all, right? Resource share is another real big one that we do. And I'll tell you guys a couple stories. When I talk about resources, I get a lot of people go, ooh, resource share, that sounds horrible. We're not pooling our money per se, but I'll give you guys some examples of the things we do. So recently, back 2 years ago, there was an old farmer that lives by where I live, and he used to have the second largest excavating company in the country. Okay, he's talking about a huge company. And he had long since retired, sold most of it off, but he had this big yard, and all the way in the back was this 18,000-pound excavator. It had been sitting there for 20 years, hadn't ran. And I'm like, Russ, sell me that thing. He's like, no. I'm like, Russ, sell me that thing. After about 2 years, one day he said to me, he said, Ted, you just have it. He said, it ain't running 20 years. If you can get it running, consider that my contribution to the community. I said, cool. So, well, it wouldn't run. So we had to lift it up with a bigger one to put it on a trailer to get it home. But anyway, so we finally got it home. I put 2 new batteries in it, spent $500, cleaned everything out, and it started right up. And so I went to the community and I said, hey, we've got this excavator. If everybody will give me $1,000, we will make everything like new, and we'll all have this excavator. You can use it at your will. You own it, I own it, we all own it. So all these members of the community now own an excavator. You know how nice that is to dig a basement or run a water line or a sewer line or it cost me $1,000. And we have a pool of money still sitting there. We're not even sure what to do with on it. You know, oil changes, those kind of things. I'll give you another example. Anybody who follows my channel knows that I built my house in pods. I have a 5,000 square foot super off-grid house. It is super efficient. It is squared away. So I built pod 1 first because I didn't want to ever borrow any money. So I just funded it as I could fund it. But I'm working on pod 4 right now. And I'm into the siding. Early when I was building my house, I bought a whole bunch of hardy board siding. Anybody know what that is? It was concrete board siding. But I ran out. I'm about 200 sticks short. So Home Depot, they have it today for $13.47 for a 12-foot stick. I'm like, all right, I need to go get some. But before I do, let me just check and see if I can find it anywhere else. So I'm doing some searching. Man, I found some for $5 a stick. Problem was, it was in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I had to buy 1,800 of them. The 1,800 of them is a lot. It was all that semi could handle. We hired a semi truck. We purchased all of that siding. I'm into it for about $6 a stick. I'll use my 200 sticks that I need, and it'll side 2 other people's homes, right, for 40 cents on the dollar. And that's what I mean by resource share, right? We'll go through and we'll do those things together so that we all can benefit. The next thing I want to talk about is head medicine, which is a huge part of community. Anybody here feel alone? You know, like you're crazy? You know? I have a friend of mine actually came to us from Tennessee. Sorry, everybody. Came to us from Tennessee, and they moved out there, and they had this Dexter cow that her name was Violet. And yeah, she's beautiful, right? Friendly. And she apparently ate a hedge apple. You guys don't have hedge trees out here. We have hedge trees where I live, you know, the hedge apple. And she got lodged in her throat. They took her to a vet. He scoped her and did some damage to her esophagus. We then took her to K-State University, which where I live, K-State's a premier, you know, ag college. And they said the damage was too great, they're going to have to put her down. But to understand what this cow meant to this lady, this was the cow that would take any calf, right? This was the cow that you would build a homestead around. And that girl cried and cried and cried and cried over this beloved pet, because they're kind of like dogs, for those of you who have Dexters. And so we called her up and said, hey, let's have dinner. And, you know, brought her over, and the community showed up and, you know, tried to make her feel better. But we can't replace her cow, but we can give her someone to talk to and someone who'll make her feel normal and not make her feel weird. I would put head medicine as the single greatest benefit to community. I get calls every week, 15 of them. My water line broke, you know, or whatever it is, whatever the problem happens to be. We joke in my community about new level, new devil. And what that means is every time you level up in our community, like let's say we got solar and we went energy independent, it presents a whole new set of devils that we have to then go deal with. Having that community helps you navigate those devils. It gives you someone to lean on. It gives you someone to talk to that understands what you're going through. So I'd put that clear at the top as well. All of those things said, though, guys, I want to stress to you again, none of those things happen unless you're intentional. You know, and people ask me all the time, you know, hey, Tag, how do you build community? I'm like, well, what have you done? Well, that's why you ain't got community. Right? You got to be willing to go out there and do something. I want to talk real quick about how we find community and kind of how we went about doing it. And maybe this will help you guys as you go through your list. The first point is, though, as I mentioned, being intentional. If you guys are sitting at home waiting because you're afraid of being put on some list, you're never going to build community. I'm telling you, you're not. You know, I can't tell you the number of people that talk to me that says, man, I went into Tractor Supply and no one talked to me. Seriously? Maybe you should go and engage in a conversation. I have a community member in my community right now who, it's hilarious how we met. She's a firecracker. If you guys, anybody wants to go back and watch the video of us building the house, this was the hustler girl. Like, she's a beast. And anyway, she was hauling feed out of Tractor Supply and had her hands full, and I had to load it. That's it. That's the magic sauce, you know? It's just, again, being intentional. I asked you guys earlier about how many gardeners we have. Can I ask you guys why you weed your garden? What's the point? You never weed yours? Yeah. Yeah, how's your harvest? Yeah. The reason I ask this question is because we weed our garden because we want the produce at the end. Right? We want the benefit of what comes from it on the backside. Community is no different. It is exactly the same. And if you're not intentional in your efforts to go build community, you're not going to get it built. I'm telling you, you're not going to do it. And so for me, I schedule it into my life. Building community is a normal part of what I do. I'm always looking for an opportunity. You know, part of the reason I wear Freeman, you won't believe the people that come up and ask me questions. Right? Because it starts that conversation. Also, this is a super important point. There has never been an easier time to build community than there is right now. We have an amazing opportunity right now. How many people think the executive branch is doing a great job? How about the legislative branch? The judicial branch? Okay, well, those all suck, but our education system rocks, right? Right? The banks, they're squared away, right? Our food system, anybody proud of where we're at in our food system? Guys, this is a great time. You are not the only ones who think things are all in disarray. They're out there, but they're scared. You guys are far enough along in your journey, we have to put ourselves in a position to help lead those other people and help guide those other people through their journey. But again, we have to be intentional. You know, it's funny, I have got many, many emails in my life where people say, Tag, I can't find anybody like me. I love that email. Like, it's like the greatest email ever. I'm like, well, if I was looking for you, where would I find you? I mean, it's not that hard, right? So let's talk about all the different ways we can find people. Let's start local. So I would imagine that most people that are here today have a Tractor Supply or a farm store. That's a great place, right? Or FHA, or 4-H, or the county fair, right? Anybody have 8 guys that meet at old guys that meet at a Burger King in the morning and have coffee? Does that happen in every community in America, or is that just mine? Every community in America, right? There's gun shows, right? There's farmers markets. Guys, all of these things are full of people who have the same mindset, but you can't just walk by and go, why didn't they talk to me? You know, you got to stop, look for an excuse. And, you know, I get a lot of questions about, man, what about OPSEC? Well, I'm not walking up to them going, dude, I got 4 AR-15s. I'm going, hey, how's it going? You know, you're buying chicken food. What kind of chickens do you raise? Oh, they're just a barnyard mix. So really, what got you into chickens? It's not hard, right? And you just start that conversation. And if you ask the right questions, you'll be amazed at what they'll say. World's interesting, isn't it? Oh, wait, you've opened the floodgate. Right? And they'll start talking. You're not trying to marry somebody. You're just trying to get on the first date. That's all you're trying to do. Guys, once you start talking to somebody, it will whittle itself out. I promise you that funnel will get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, you know, kind of as you go through it. Another really, really big one. Anybody live in a community where you see signs on the, you know, down driveways that say eggs for sale? Yeah. Produce for sale? Animals for sale? Everybody's got them, right? So 2 points on this. One, if you're the one with the sign, now we're coming to you. Ask the question, right? But if you're driving down the road and you see those signs, if I was new to a community, I moved into Tennessee and I wanted to start a community, I promise you guys, day one, I'd have 20 dozen eggs, 2 totes of produce, and a turkey named Roger in the back of my truck. My wife would be saying, I would. My wife would be going, why are you buying eggs? We've got 100 chickens. But the point is that's how you build those relationships, right? Which again, you got to go out there, guys. You have to be intentional. Technology is another really good one. You guys know there's websites out there like freesteady.com. There's a state page for every state. Tennessee's got 500 people in it. Probably. Go there. But here's the thing. You can't just read posts. You know? If all you're doing is reading, no one's ever going to know you're there. Just so you know. Right? You got to be intentional. You got to do those things. Freedom Cells. You guys know Derek Bros and John Bush from the Exit and Build Summit? Okay? So they run Freedom Cells. That's another great place. I'll guarantee you there's a ton of Freedom Cells right here in Tennessee. Facebook. I know everybody hates Facebook, but I promise you, anybody get on Facebook right now and type in Tennessee homestead groups. There's probably 100 of them, right? But again, you got to go what? Be intentional. You know, you got to go down those roads. Attending events, I wanted to make a special note. My community has been blessed by the Self Reliance Festival and the Midwest Preparedness Festival, right? And the Exit and Build. I go to a lot of them. This is a great place to meet people. You know, I don't know if you guys, anybody met any jerks here today? I haven't, you know. everyone's been pretty cool to me, well, except Bobby Spags. Bobby was a jerk. Okay, so we talked about how we're going to find community. Really, it's just a matter of being intentional. But the hardest part, everything that I've described up to this point is the easy part. You're like, oh my God, circles, and it's, believe me, it's the easy part. The hardest part is keeping it. Because unfortunately, humans are involved. Right? And people have egos. And so there's some things that I've learned along the way that have helped us in our community. The first one I want to talk about is define your goal. You know, you guys looking for that zombie apocalypse ride or die team, or you want a social, gardening club? It's very important that what we understand is that, not that we agree on everything, because guys, I'm telling you we don't, but that we're kind of headed in the same direction. And if you just sit down and say, hey, like for me, what I was looking for, once they pissed me off, and I said, hey, I'm going to go build my own town. And that's what guided, that whole process to where it is today. But make sure you guys understand kind of where you're going, because without it, you'll have that zombie apocalypse team competing for weekend time against that socialist gardening club. Right? So start right there. Next thing is communicate. Communication is such a beautiful thing, and it's so easy today. I'm going to tell you guys how we do it. Do it however you want. Obviously, we have Obviously, we have the normal text chains, right, that go on. But every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock in my community, we have a Zoom call, and we just talk about what's going on. Who's building what, who's struggling with what, any advice on what. Somebody just got Dexter's, and they want to talk to Louise because Louise is the Dexter Pro or whatever it is. But it goes on every single Wednesday at 8 o'clock religiously. We have a newsletter, so once a month, the newsletter goes out to our entire mag. So this is a 100-mile circle. And in that newsletter I write an article for it every single episode. Usually I focus on law, mineral rights, water rights, those kind of things. But there's people who write articles about selling raw milk, or, how to keep a wall square. Simple little things. We do it because it keeps people engaged into what we're doing. People get bored pretty quick. I don't know if you've noticed that or not. Next point I wanted to say to you guys is celebrate success. And that might seem silly, but I can't tell you the number of people I've seen tear down somebody else because they were further along. What a joke that is. Yeah, so let's celebrate people's success, and then let's not rob them of that success simply because we're further along in a process. I talk about Indiana Mike a lot. He just got his house framed, and he's got a long ways to go. I look around at his place and I'm like, oh my God, he's got barns to build and fences to build and there's all this to do, but he is so excited, right? Because he has made that step and he's getting, freer and freer. Be humble. I would stress that too. If you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. You don't have to know everything. And it's okay. We go back to the building of the house. So we're building the house. I've been building my whole life. I love to build things. And the way they were building a header above a window, I would not have done it like that. But that wasn't my job that day. My job was to run the cut crew. So I just butted out. It's not the end of the world that they want to build a header different than the way you think it needs to be built. You don't have to tell them you're wrong. Right? Don't get you anywhere. Also, local activities. So I'm with somebody from the community almost every day at one point in time or the other. But we do lots of dinners and potlucks and those kind of things. But one of the things we do that I think is magical, and you guys can watch my channel and you'll see, we do what's called a homestead rotation. So any homestead in my area, they'll call up and they'll say, hey, I've got one on October the 21st coming up when I get back from here. They'll call up and say, hey, we want to do a homestead rotation on this date. We're going to be putting up firewood. And 60 or 70 people will show up. Last year in October, we put up 13 and a half cords of wood in 6 hours. That was it for me. That was all the wood I needed, We built a house. Coming up on the 21st, we're going to put the roof on that house. The trusses, the plywood, all of that stuff as soon as I get back into town. So activities will certainly help you guys. Let me switch my paper here. The other thing is, this one's probably as big as any of them. I don't know if you guys know this, but you're all flawed. I'm flawed, right? If we're going to get into these silly arguments about what this scripture means, or how to build a header, you're never going to have a community. You got to be able to let that little stuff go and recognize, what, some people have a bad day, and I'm okay with being the 100 that day if they're the 20. It's okay. It's not a big deal. But you have to recognize first that you're flawed. Right? I'm flawed, I promise you. Don't contribute to division and cliques. This happens a lot too. I get a lot of requests about, hey, why don't the 5 of us just go shooting this day? No. I'm going to put a mass message out and anybody that wants to go can go. And that's how I kind of defeat that cliqueism, that wants to grow up in most of those communities. Last thing I want to talk about, and then I'll close and I'll answer whatever questions you got, is don't discount anyone. Every single person has value. I'll tell you a story about my mom. My mom is almost 80 years old, and she's in horrible health. And she can't get down in the gardens anymore. She just can't do those things. But you know what? When it comes to harvest day, I put a little stool out. I put her on the stool, and she will peel apples all day under one condition, that I have Murder, She Wrote running on the TV. I'm fine. Put Murder, She Wrote on. Let them do it, you know? And she will do it all day long. Guys, just to kind of close all of this out, make sovereignty the building block of your community. Because I'm telling you, it will avoid so many problems. And ask me how I know. I had a community that was there for 6 years that broke apart over a bowl of cereal. And it was never about the bowl of cereal, right? That was just the piece that ultimately, got it there. And then, we cannot say that we're pro-freedom and then push our beliefs onto somebody else. That's not how that works. Freedom only works if it works always, right? To all beliefs. The other thing, guys, is, we have to cultivate our community through our own intention. So my final thought to you guys is be intentional. Someone's got to drive the bus, and that somebody is you. Questions?
Yeah, time for one.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
I talk too much.
You killed it, Tag. It's all right. Is your spreadsheet, freedom spreadsheet, available? And what did you score? If you don't mind?
No, I don't mind at all. When I first took it, I scored in the 30s. Okay. I'm at 79.8 today. I'm super proud of it because it's taken a ton to get that far. And if you go to lifedonefree.com, it's available for download. I don't want your email address. I don't ask you any questions. Go download it.
And this follow-up is on the opportunity matrix of, I don't necessarily have a specific skill like maybe you did. If you're looking at where you're going to put your efforts on what skill you can do, you can't do everything. How would you analyze that and say, you might want to do it this way, or this is the best skill to learn when you're trying to build this community?
Yeah, so for me, it's not really so much about, hey, you go learn this skill. It's that opportunity presents itself. So like, for example, I talked about Indiana Mike's and MMR. She's worked in logistics for 20 years. Okay, that skill's done. One off my list, right? So I just built a cinder block wall, a little retaining wall all the way around my house. I've never laid a cinder block. Nobody knew how to do it. So that was a skill I had to go learn. So I really let opportunity and circumstance kind of dictate those kind of things.
Thanks, Ted. Appreciate you. I'm sure you'll be around here.
Oh, yeah. When there wants to talk, I will be here.